Hello, Steve Barsick Amstel from High Tech Design Safety here. Hope you're having a great week. We're continuing with our process and training about getting your product listed, labeled, or certified. And if you remember, we shifted gears to come more from your side of the game than ours. Made sense to me, so we're going to move forward with that. Today, we're going to talk about internal resources or what your company's going to need to have or have in place to be sure that you have the team and the money and everything else to get it done, but also the mindset and understanding of what it's going to take. So internal roles, you're going to have a project manager. That's the key one here. That's why I have it in a bigger font. Purchasing is going to play a role. They have to get the POs and everything out to the people doing the work. If you have an internal product safety team, that's great. If you don't, reach out to someone like us or someone else who can manage that role for you. You're going to have your own internal electrical design team and electronics design team, probably different groups. Electrical being your power into your system and all of your main power, and then your electronics being, of course, that processors and other things like that. Two different internal resources are needed there typically. Mechanical, you're going to have whatever enclosure design and then any kind of moving parts design. And then packaging. Is it going to have to go into a box or anything else? And what are the requirements there for this product? You're also going to have someone managing the documentation, not only the drawing sets and the bombs and revision control and everything over all of the design side, but also taking care of all the manuals that are required. So if you need a boilerplate for a safety manual, we can help send you one of those from the standards. And then whatever labeling is required. I don't know, some people put labeling in the mechanical group or the product safety group or the documentation group. Wherever it goes, you're still going to need to be either producing or acquiring labels and have a drawing and BOM and source for those labels, and then those labels get added back to the manual. Manufacturing, of course, the factory that is going to manufacture the product needs to have their quality control process and also needs to be prepared for an audit. Once the product is listed or labeled or certified, there does need to be an audit of the manufacturing. And the quality control team will probably manage that internal audit along with your product safety manager and maybe your product manager at that point. And then test. QC might manage the test side of your product as it comes out of manufacturing. Manufacturing might manage it. It might be joint. Also, product safety will be involved with that as well. Those are the roles. So internally, that whole design team is going to be part of the evaluation process. There's going to be questions to answer. And on the front side, of course, designing your product to meet the standards is critical. And we've covered that before. If you need help there, look at the other videos or reach out to us. And then whoever's your product manager, they're also going to end up having to manage the certification process and drive that project management. And that needs to be driven from the client side, meaning your side. For smaller companies, in a less complex piece of equipment, expect one person to spend a minimum of 10 hours per week managing just the certification process. So think about that. That's one person, 10 hours a week for 3 to 4 months. If you budget for that and don't use it all, you're going to be way happier than not having it and having the process drag on. More internal resources are going to be needed for more difficult, complex products. For something more complex, that project manager is going to need 10 to 20 hours a week, and then electrical and mechanical 8 and to 12 hours per week, and including documentation and document control. Now, this is not going to be every single week, but when we are working with the listing and labeling company, lab, test lab, NRTL, you will need that high level of interaction. In general, this is going to be a 3 to 4 month commitment for a normal piece of equipment. Something that is, more complex or hazardous location or multiple pieces of equipment in a system is going to take more time. If your team is more experienced, it's going to take less time to get through. Still going to be 3 to 4 months, but I mean less time weekly to do it because they probably already have boilerplate answers and they know what needs to be there and it's all already designed in, so you'll be good there. But just know that if you have a lot of hazards, like let's say lasers and x-rays and moving things and all of that, it's going to be a more complex process than say a simple desktop device that maybe only has an electrical hazard. And the key points here is you do need a project manager. Most of the big test labs and NRTLs and groups like that have honestly done away with their project managers. They don't have one touch point where you can go in and say, hey, how's my project doing? You kind of have to follow it through the process and see where it is and then have and be able to develop some rapport with the engineers such that you can get it moved forward. Some labs won't even let you talk to the engineers, but then you wonder why they don't have a project manager. It's kind of crazy, right? So you're going to need someone on your team who's good at project management. That includes having the people skills and the way of doing it. We had a client recently who had a real hard time getting project through and still are. And they decided that, the best thing to do was just call the engineer every single day. That didn't help. Coming to agreements and commitments and, mutual respect and understanding of what it takes and how to get there, that's the kind of people skills that project manager is going to need. Also need to set expectations for your team. Have them know that they're going to spend, 3, 4, 8 hours a week on this project till it's done. Like, let them know that. Let them know that it's going to be 3 to 4 months plus any redesign that's needed. And also let them know that 3 to 4 months doesn't start when you start the design process. It starts when the conforming product is produced. Now, designing to the requirements definitely has to start at the beginning, but the certification process is after you have a conforming product produced, samples available, documentation available, and everything else. The other key thing for the team and for management is that when you do get a findings letter back from the test lab, that those questions and nonconformances have an elevated priority over everything else that's going on. That way people understand that this is critical path to getting the product to market and that we support you in shifting focus from something new or sustaining work to completing on this as a priority. So some other key points to look at. Management sure needs to understand that this is a process. Engineering is a process. Making the product conform is a process. And if your team has already done it a dozen times successfully together, you're probably better off. But it's still a lot of work and it's going to take time to get there. However, they also have to commit that doing this is going to make the product cost a bit more. However, in the end, you're going to have a better product with wider market acceptability. And in some cases, you can't sell products like this without a listing and labeling. So having them understand a priority and timing is perfect and critical. Then working with your test labs, be generous and kind with these people. They're really worked hard. Conflicting priorities, lack of project management, just sheer volume of work coming through. People who with broad expertise are retiring at an alarming rate, and it's tough on their side too. Look, you really want your product done, so be polite, but yeah, also ask for deadlines and when's stuff going to happen by, and ask permission to check back in when that timeline happens, and ask for information about when it gets handed off, because at first your product is going to go for a desktop evaluation. They're going to look at the drawings and paperwork and bombs and everything, and if everything there passes, then it's going to go to the testing portion. And actually on the test side, where they're testing things like flammability or EMC or other things, there's more project management on that side. So you might get more visibility there. And then ask who is available to help you understand their process. How does it work? Why does it work that way? What's going on? Just so that you can be informed on who you might need to talk to next to get it done. Now, there are problems. This is not a simple, easy process. You're working with people who don't report to you, who are out of your control, who are, maybe out of your state. Maybe, you can't go visit them. So that can happen. And it's not unusual for people to make the decision to stop with one test lab and change to another lab. Look, that's a big decision to make. It costs money and time and effort, and it happens. The lab itself is not primarily interested in your product getting to market. They're primarily interested in being billable and billing and keeping their company alive. So know that having a project manager on board who can have these people agree to and commit to and keep your product moving forward is critical. Also realize that, if somebody at the test lab who has been working on your project leaves, gets sick, or whatever else, that's going to impact your schedule too. So be generous with what happens there. And turnarounds, what I mean there is when somebody asks questions, they're going to turn the project back around to you and say, look, explain to me these points. But when that happens, it puts your project back at the end of the line. So again, looking at that, that's another reason to have a complete package when you go to the lab. Using our conformity discovery process is one way to do that. Solutions. How to get past those problems and manage them. Well, have a product safety team support your product. So if you have somebody inside who that can be their main role, perfect. If your project manager has enough knowledge to take that on, excellent. Please do that. But have them take that role on and understand that they're project managing this product through the approvals process is critical, crucial, supported, understood, funded, valued, all those things that have someone be successful. And like I said earlier, it's also great if they're, personable and used to doing this kind of work, taking somebody from deep within your engineering team who is introverted, not a people person, and hard to work with is going to be not a good idea. Go with somebody who can do that. HTDS, we're a team of product people. We all came out of product and product manufacturing, equipment, semiconductor, aerospace. We're used to getting products to market, and that's really what excites us. So use us if you can. Be ultra conservative on your schedules. You're going to hear numbers like 3 to 4 months from me. That is absolute best case. I have a client, long-term client, that we were kicking off a project right before the pandemic lockdown. And he reported to his management team it could take up to 12 months to do that project. I was letting him know it'd be about 6, but it could stretch out. All of a sudden, we've dumped 2 months worth of delays in on his project. Airports shut down, people shut down, people out of work, people sick. And it was great. He's conservative. We're moving it forward. Be conservative. Don't go to your, you get a number and somebody says, oh, that'll take a month to get through listing and labeling. Don't believe that either. I mean, if it takes 3 to 4 months, that's perfect. That's like best case. So by being conservative, say 4 to 6. If somebody says 3 to 4, go to the other side of that. Somebody tells you a month, don't believe it. If they tell you it's going to take a month, then say, okay, that's great. Give me the phone numbers of 3 other people who have completed their listing in 1 month, and I'll be happy to know that. Otherwise, don't believe it. Turnarounds, again, questions, nonconformities, things like that. Team needs to be sure that that is crucial, that turnaround is the number one priority. So take a look at that and be sure everybody's there. And then set a phone call or WebEx or Zoom or whatever you use with the engineer who sent you the nonconformity letter so that you can walk through it line by line before you do your response and then after you complete your response. You want to be sure you have enough in-depth understanding of what the questions and nonconformances are before you respond to them. And then after you respond to them, make sure that what you've given the evaluator is sufficient for them to say it conforms. In fact, it's very good in your response to say, we changed fuse XZY971, just giving you an example, on drawing number, on block number, on row and column number from 5 amp to 3.5 amp as required by standard number XYZ line item 15 and per the nonconformity letter dated and then in there, even, it seems overkill, cut out the response from the standard and the response from the lab. So it's all there in one spot. Okay, so yeah, that's probably going to take 15 or 20 extra minutes to do that level of detail, maybe 30 or 45. However, when the lab gets it, they can look at it, they can match it to what they said, they can match it to the standard, they can match it to the drawings, and they can go, oh yeah, it's done. So anyway, that last little bit of information is part of our conformity discovery process. It's how we move things through the lab. I hope this is useful to you. I know it has been to hundreds of other clients. Look forward to our next video. I really enjoy putting these together. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your week.